So, a little bit different today. I wanted to talk about a concept for leveling that I call keld0rn rings, essentially, that kind of makes resistance so much easier, at least in my mind. And it's basically about these two rings that you can acquire extremely early in campaign, around the time where you add the pirate, right? I wanted to talk about this concept real quick. To start it off, like the general wisdom or the general idea, which is totally true and fine for resistance during campaign, especially the very, very early part, because they're obviously super important. Like the general gist of what players do and kind of aim for at least for speedy leveling, that it's more or less safe, goes typically something like this. You're in Act 1, you're starting out, and obviously this is like League Start leveling, not with extra gear, but it starts out like you want some cold dress for Merville, right? So that's typically after the pirate here. People are checking the vendor, making sure they have get one of the sapphire rings, they get cold dress here. You enter Act 2. There's some lightning damage here, but it doesn't really matter for the Wild Ruins. So where typically people want some fire resistance, or you should want some fire resistance. And technically, even to be fair, going forward, you probably also want some lightning resistance for the lasers from the Wild Oversoul. People are taking typically here in the Western Forest Alira, right? And they're taking some resistance on the tree as well. At least Alira is a really good choice for safety and easy campaign. And then somewhere around Act 3, latest, lightning resistance becomes quite important, right? Especially for Dominus. It's typically the saying, oh yeah, for Dominus, you want 20 degree, probably also for Piety for the first encounter. But yeah, especially Dominus is oh, really should have lightning resistance now. And then people tend to be in Act 4, and before they go for the rest of cold area and the fire area here somewhere, after Dried Lake or so. So it seems to be a good point in time where people go to their hideout for the first time and do a little bit of crafting, right? Fix up resistances, which also matches quite nicely with that. Typically Act 3 to 4 is where your gear and your sockets and links you have kind of settle in. You should have your 4 link by then, hopefully, or at least most gear pieces you can quite comfortably keep. So it's more worth it to craft here. And as well, you have some transmutes typically for the resistance crafts. And then towards Act 5, yeah, you're getting gear here anyway. And then, yeah, you need to prepare for the resistance penalty at Kitava. So that's the basic idea. And I still believe that is true. So the concept I wanted to introduce you to today is, I call them keld0rn rings because, in case you don't know, keld0rn is one of the top speedrunners of this game. And I believe I've seen them do this deliberately, it seems like, in 1 or 2 of his runs. I don't really remember which ones they are. That's quite a time ago. But I really fell in love with this, yeah, kind of concept thing. And that goes like this, right? Typically, you collect any sapphire rings and topaz rings anyway you find. You just put them into your inventory during Act 1. You collect all the iron rings you can find. And at some point, you end up at the pirate, right? And until then, it doesn't really matter. Obviously, you can equip some of the rings you have. Maybe you're starting off a bit more melee heavy, assuming you're not an actual melee character, but who would play a melee character anyway? So you're probably a caster or a bowcock or something like that. And you kill the pirate, right? And you go back to town after that, typically anyway, right? You kill the pirate and you have gotten this waypoint here, and then there's your level 12 gems anyway. So not too many people are skipping that. And also I believe there's even a skill point. So you got back to town anyway. And the idea is, as soon as you go back to town, you want to create these specific 2 rings. You want a sapphire ring, and you want to craft fire resistance on it. And you want to have a topaz ring, and without any craft on it, or it can have, but it doesn't really matter. You can do 2 fire crafts if you really wanted to, but 1 is perfectly enough. You want to create these. And since I'm trying that, I haven't failed, and I do level a lot of characters. I haven't failed this a single time. It's almost guaranteed that you basically have these rings just by either you can make them, obviously, right? If you vendor this, like any green gem with an iron ring gives you a topaz, I believe. This gives you a sapphire, and this technically a a ruby ring, but ruby rings can only be equipped starting at level 16. So they're kind of out of the question for this whole concept. As these two rings both require level 12, so you can pretty much equip them right around Merville, or a bit earlier if you're over leveling. So rubies are kind of out of the question. Other than that, you can obviously go to the vendor here, and your chances are pretty high. Like in this case, we got 1 sapphire and 1 iron ring here, like maybe even one with like 3 wisdom scrolls. Like these are 3 wisdom scrolls and these as well. And if you don't have a gem, you just go here and pick one of the corresponding colors from the top for another wisdom. So like maximum 4 wisdoms to get a ring, or 3 wisdoms if you have to buy them here or you find some on the way. And there's like almost no chance that you don't have these rings. What that means in terms of resistance, if you equip these rings, these 2 rings here, you end up with, and I have like a little bit of a sheet here I'm gonna explain to you, is like depending on the rolls, that's always why min and max here. The sapphire is going to give you 20 to 30. The topaz is also going to give you 20 to 30 of lightning in this case. And the firecraft gives you 16 to 20 also, depending on the roll. In addition, you're going to get a bunch of resistance on your tree, right? And just your tree plus rings already gives you these resistance values for free. If you on top take a keld0rn in Act 2, you end up with these resistance values depending on how strong your tree is and how strong your rolls are. These resistance rolls here are completely enough for Act 5. Assuming you're maybe not in hardcore and you're kind of good enough to not get hit, this is already fine. And that is just 2 rings, which you can basically guarantee a lira and stuff from the tree. So this is basically 100% guaranteed resistance on this level here. And doesn't even factor in any additional gear you might find that has random resistances, right? It also doesn't stop you to still in Act 4, maybe when your gear has more or less settled, still do some crafts. And going forward then obviously towards Act 5, you have still the opportunity. You're going to do 1 or 2 runs of Chamber of Innocence probably anyway. You drop some gear there to double check there again. Okay, now your gear should really be settled, so it's way easier to craft on it. You find way more rares that might actually have resistance, but all your links are already done. If you equip these rings and get, where did it go? And get these values here baseline, that also means you can swap your gear freely because of links, because none of your other gear, you're not going to swap your rings for any sockets or links. You can swap any gear until late into the Act 4 or 5 completely freely without messing up your resistance, just because I don't know, you find a 4 link and then it's, I don't know, on gloves, but the gloves had all your resistance, and then all this like nitty gritty annoying stuff is just completely gone. You effectively solve resistances until Act 5 entirely with equipping these 2 rings. And that's what makes it so beautiful, I feel like. It's just like you completely free up your brain space while trying to go fast from this extra burden of taking care of resistances. So what I typically do then is, in Act 5, I'm arriving at the Chamber of Innocence anyway, or very early already. I picked this ring typically from the reward. There's this one reward that gives you 2 stone rings, so I always pick the fire and lightning one. And I mean, to be fair, it's a rare one. And like just swapping this one out for the topaz ring, I typically keep this one just going, and I swap the topaz with this one. Just swapping it out doesn't solve it, right? But like in this case, if you just do this, okay, in this case we get 5 all-res, and it's already a better ring than this one. And I can just equip this and run around with this and then see, okay, during Chamber of Innocence, okay, what other stuff did I already drop? My links are typically sorted, everything is fine, and then I can go, before I kill Kitaba, or worst case after that in Act 6, I can go ahead and craft in all my other gear, see where do I have suffixes left, and I can craft all on that stuff basically, and solve my resistances to take the Kitaba penalty, and then I'm basically fine for Acts 6 to 10, and next time I have to worry about it is somewhere in Act 10, right? It's like just so much brain space you're saving by equipping these 2 rings early, swapping for this one, and then basically, right, you can still do in Act 4 some crafting if you're in hardcore or something, but like between, I killed the pirate, go back to town, and arriving here in Chamber of Innocence, like this entire first half of the entire campaign, I'm not worried about resistance. I just can just ignore it entirely and focus on other things because I have by far enough resistance to survive all of that. I mentioned on this sheet thing here that there is something on the tree, and that's a bit dependent on what character you're playing. Like if we search here for all elemental kind of things. If you're starting as a witch, you get like 10 all-res here, which is super accessible. As a Templar, you typically get Holy Dominion, which is a bit more. It's like 12 all-res. And if you're starting as a Marauder for some reason, then Diamond Skin is typically a very efficient points to get. That's a bit different if you're starting a Duelist. This one doesn't really have that, I feel like. I mean, you have this one, but do you really take this, right? It's like typically you would path down here probably and not here. I mean, you could take it, but it seems a bit uncommon to do this as a Duelist. So Duelist probably doesn't really have the tree part. The same for a Ranger. I think the designated node would be this one. It's a small one anyway with 8. And it's, yeah, I mean, you have spell suppression and movement speed here. So if you're passing through that, even if you go down here, you're probably not gonna take this anyway. And kind of the same for what's it called, a Shadow, I believe. It doesn't really have that. I mean, maybe you could come up here, but it doesn't seem to be this like designated, like a witch, right? You just go up here and you obviously grab this. So that's where the tree part comes from. Makes a little bit of a difference here. But still, even without the tree things and even without taking a Lyra, I mean, if you don't take both, then you need more brain space to fix your resistances. But for like at least half the classes, there's like no-brainer ones, and a Lyra is something you should take anyway if you want some kind of stability and easiness. Obviously, it doesn't apply to like actual speedruns. Their stuff is a bit more complicated, a bit more different, but for a general purpose, this is really nice, I find. So yeah, that's kind of my my tip for speedy campaign that really frees up a lot of brain space and eliminates a bunch of fail states, essentially, where you can more freely swap your gear. You have like this baseline resistance, and if you end up with like 50-60 res, all res, and probably even res cap because you're gonna have some random resistance on gear anyway, then you almost can't die anymore. Like resistances are that powerful. So yeah, hope this helps. Bye.